to New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. We're live every Thursday night around 8 p.m. You might be hanging out with us on C31 or C44 or listening to us as a podcast. My name's Cringe, and I'm joined by Adrian, Millie, and Jason this week on the show. How y'all doing?
Good.
Pretty great.
Yeah, great, quote unquote.
Well, I mean, Jason and I are the only ones in lockdown still. Like, both of you are, for the most part, out of, like, you can leave the house and it's not, like, you're not committing a crime. You're not a criminal for, like, going past your front door.
Well, I mean, they one of them's in Sydney, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Whether
the weather is getting nice in Sydney, though. Yeah, still gotta be careful.
Whether it's a moral crime
Yeah,
or
we're
not.
Gucci up here. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all right. Just stab a koala on your way out the door.
Oh, it's a New South Wales tradition. But in Queensland, you were saying earlier, shit, it's hot. Like, and the humidity, gross.
Yeah, it hit September and it's just like, oh, hey, did you forget about me? Humidity. Yeah, so I'm very moist. It's gross.
Everything's so moist. I mean,
I don't miss that.
Ben Shapiro on blast. That's fine.
I don't miss the bull. That was a fantastic.
I am a wet ass Millie right now.
The bull soup that we'd experienced going into the Triple Z studio, it was fucking gross. It was so bad.
Yeah.
And it was a mix of Glen 20 and armpit, wasn't it? Was the smell?
Yeah. Glen 20 and armpit, and then sometimes with a little bit of foot mixed in.
Oh, I really hate that. That's too vivid. Coming up on the show, Adrian and I are going to go in on Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, this absolute trash fire of a launch that Square Enix have done to themselves, specifically in Australia and New Zealand. So they've had a bunch of server issues. Whether the game is any good or not, I guess a good way to put it is we'll go through the list of grievances we have with the remaster and actually with the original as well. Millie, you've been playing Beyond Blue, which is not the mental health service. This is a game.
No. It's not the mental health service, but it should be for mental health. It is. I basically call it ASMR the game. It is so peaceful.
And Jason,
I need that.
You've been playing a shitload of games. If you were going to give me two of the ones we're going to record live on the show, which ones? Like, do you want to get back to me, or like, do you want to kind of pull the trigger now?
As in the ones worth talking about is tough because so I've got what have I finished? Battletoads Carrion, Fairy Tale, Man Eater, Destroy All Humans. And there's one more that I'm forgetting. Out of them, I think the ones worth discussing, to be honest, are probably the two. I would say the two bigger titles, which are Fairy Tale and Destroy All Humans, just because they're like the other ones are all indie titles. So to a certain extent, you can forgive a lot of their foibles. But these two bigger ones, it's a re-release of a classic and like a Gust RPG based on a popular anime property. So if there's two that I was going to give any attention to, they're probably the two that I would say are worth the most time on.
Well, it's all coming up later on in the show. It's going to be a long show. Also got Jamie's The Recommended coming up. First, we have the week in video game news headlines. I'm going to start off with Rocket League. After transitioning to a free-to-play model, Rocket League will no longer require a subscription to PlayStation Plus on PS4 or Nintendo Switch Online to play the game online. Sony and Nintendo make exceptions for free-to-play games like Warframe and Fortnite, letting players enjoy those games without a paid subscription. Microsoft still requires an Xbox Live Gold subscription for free-to-play games on Xbox, though. There's not a whole lot of news here, but because Jason and I have spoken at length about Xbox Live Gold is on the way out. Like, the writing is on the wall. That shit's gotta go. No one wants it. No one needs it. If you can play the game on PC for free online, why would you play on Xbox Live Gold? Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you think
Xbox doesn't make sense?
Well, I mean, Xbox Game Pass is still really compelling. Like, the fact that I still feel like it's theft. Like, basically just theft, where we pay up for Xbox Live Gold for 2 years and then do the $1 to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate conversion.
Phil Spencer doesn't care. Phil Spencer just rubs his hands and goes, beautiful. Yeah.
But it's like, where's the gotcha? It's like, it can't literally just be Xbox just really want people to play games. That's not how that works. Like, they're a goddamn company. And I get they've got money in the bank, but at a certain point, it's like, where are they gonna... But Rocket League transitioning to free to play, it's also worth pointing out it's transitioning from a Steam game over to everyone's favorite launcher, the Epic Game Store. That is going to be happening at the same time. I think sometime in September, October-ish. They've gotten a hard date on that, but look, I feel like there are far worse things to go free to play, and in the way that Rocket League is going to go free to play as well. I think that's totally fair because it's still a really solid, fun game. They haven't made it pay to win, so.
I think this was the thing. They never expected to be the success that it was. It took off. It just became an esport. It became everything because it's strange as it sounds. Car soccer is still, to me, more of an esport than a lot of other ones because there's no like the random elements are the ball. The physics of the ball are the random elements of that game. And for a good esport, you just need it to be. It is what it is. Here are some elements that might be, difficult or RNG, but you want to limit RNG as much as possible because you want it to be based on player skill. So it was already a solid esport. It followed a simple formula. It made hundreds of millions of dollars, and then Tencent said, "Here's another few hundreds of millions of dollars." So it's in their interest to do it. And I guess at this point, you have to wonder whether you can actually even play it in America because, did the Tencent ban go through, or have they backed off from that?
I'm not too sure about that, but I mean, it's probably something that was in the news headlines for a bit, and it'll probably end up fading from people's memory, and because no one pulled a trigger on it or whatever else. But I mean, I'd like to say the same about TikTok in the US, but I think we were hearing about Microsoft buying TikTok at a certain point.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going to happen next. In other news, the PS5 is not looking likely to play older games, in a surprise to pretty much no one. Sony's next-gen PlayStation will feature some level of backward compatibility with PlayStation 4 games, but it's looking less likely to have compatibility with older titles. According to a support frequently asked questions page on Ubisoft's Australian support website, the PS5 will not be backward compatible with original PS1, 2, or 3 games. Sony never promised backward compatibility. Sony never promised backward compatibility for those titles, but a patent filing in July suggested that PS1, 2, and 3 games would be available via cloud streaming, similar to PlayStation Now. It's still a gross way to go about doing it. It wouldn't be difficult to run PlayStation games, PlayStation 2 games certainly, on the PS5, because you can do that now. The PS2, there are PS2 games that you can play on your PS4. PS1 games.
Yes, there's only a few though.
Yeah, I think Ape Escape 2 or 3 are there, and then it's like Dark
Two's
Chronicle
on there
or
sure.
Dark Cloud, which I think are fantastic games to have on there. I wish that Ape Escape 1 got a remaster, but that's something else. But yeah, PlayStation Now is such a fucking joke. I mean, it doesn't even, it's not existent in Australia. We can't access it.
Basically.
PS3 games are the only ones that you can play on PlayStation Now, which is like, guys, you've missed such a big opportunity.
And it's really funny too, because the emulators are starting to get to the point where they can actually emulate PS3 really well. The biggest thing with PS3 was always the architecture issues. You couldn't emulate it because just the nature of the architecture meant that it was tough to do. Now we're at that point where the PC, some of the PC emulators can run a virtual machine of it well enough to run, and some of the more graphic intensive games, sure, like Metal Gear Solid suffers and things like that. But a lot of the standard stuff like Tokyo Jungle, there's no reason that Tokyo Jungle couldn't come across another platform.
Stop bringing up Tokyo Jungle.
Shut up. You're not my dad.
Jungle.
Yeah, it's look, I'll save it. But basically, to me, it's probably one of the best games that Sony's ever released. And it's basically you start off as a Pomeranian. The story is you start off as a Pomeranian locked in an apartment building, and the apocalypse happens and all humans die. Every human dies, right? So all the animals escape.
Love it.
So basically you start as this little Pomeranian, and you can't kill much. You can kill a chicken, you can kill like small stuff, but then you kill, and then you find a Pomeranian, and then you have 3 choices of like I can't remember what it's called, like lousy female or lousy, then like normal, and then like prime. And so obviously you want to get to the point where your energy and your strength is so good that you can get the prime one, and then you pass those attributes on to your kids, so your strength will get bigger, blah blah. So by the end of it, you have like level 99 Pomeranians one-shotting crocodiles because like they're generationally they've become so strong. So it's like baby's first natural selection kind of thing. And so it's just such a wonderful and the worst part of it is just walking around. You go from like Dogenzaka Hill to like Yoyogi Park. That's where the lions live, and then the lions live on the trains as well. And I don't know. I love Tokyo Jungle, and I just wish it was on more platforms. But moral story is Sony don't even release their good games on backwards compatibility.
No, well, I mean, you're right. Like PS3 games are getting to the point where they can be emulated. I've tried emulation of Tales of Zillia, which is a game that I own, and I own a PS3 as well. It's worth pointing that out. But I've got the emulator running on my laptop.
Call the cops.
I try to like clean the slate when I can. But I've had Tales of Zillia running on my laptop, and I remember Galileo was like, "What the fuck? You can do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, bitch." RP CSX3 or something, I think it's called.
Yes,
is a very good emulator. It's not a Dolphin yet because we're nowhere near that. But like, shit, it's come a very long way. Dolphin's the GameCube one, the Wii one. Talking about graphics, I guess, while we're doing that, NVIDIA has revealed the next gen of graphics cards. The RTX 30 series are the second generation of NVIDIA GPUs with hardware-based support for real-time ray tracing, 2 years after the first-gen RTX 20 series GPUs. The RTX 3070, 80, and 90 will be the first consumer-oriented gaming graphics cards featuring NVIDIA's new Ampere microarchitecture. In Australia, the 3090 will be available for only $2,429. The 3080 will be available for $1,139, and the 3070 will be available from $809.
Gotta pay for those rays.
It's so much
beautiful.
money.
Ray tracing though, like looks.
But I don't even know how much money that is.
RTX on though, like I think with all of the savings that I've gotten through like JobSeeker and JobKeeper, I'd be able to narrowly afford a 3090, but then not be able to eat for like a few months. Yeah,
I mean, mustard rays.
You could render food. You could render realistic food in a game.
Exactly. You could render so many things. You could ray trace so many things. You wouldn't even need to have like live in the real world. You know, we're getting closer and closer to Ready Player One, to Sword Art Online. You know, like let's.
Oh, please don't.
Shut that shit down.
What are you stealing, Griff? Yeah.
We were talking in a Discord about. I think it was Cloney that was like, am I going to pull a trigger on a 3070 or something? And we've got people with a 1070 and a 1060. And I still think the 1060 is a really compelling graphics card. The 1660 is a really good card. They don't have ray tracing, like the ray tracing cores. But, you know, the 1660 I was looking at for a PC is $300. The 2060 is like $500, and it's crap at ray tracing. This technology is so expensive, and I get that they've made a lot of improvements in, you know, how they've optimized it, how efficient in terms of power usage it is. But like, shit, bro, $2,400 for one component, fuck off. Like, it's so much money.
Imagine all the Bitcoin you can mine with that. Like, ludicrous.
Please don't bring up Bitcoin.
I hate mustard race stuff, man. Like especially gamers who bring up Bitcoin, bring up mustard race stuff. It's like, dude, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if you can experience their stupid game with all the ray tracing and all of the thing in the world. If it doesn't aid the experience, then who gives it? Like, unless there's specific, like something like Crysis, where they make a point of being graphically intensive in the old days and stuff, fine. But like, then you play the game, and you're like, well, this isn't a great necessarily.
It's not even a good game.
Play.
Yeah. What I want to do?
So it's like.
I would get a 30 series card, and what I would do is I would try and, because you see a bunch of people emulate Breath of the Wild and then mod the shit out of it. Like, they just make it look so hot, and I would just do that. I would absolutely pull a trigger on that and just load it up with mods.
See, Nintendo are a good example, though. They're very good at making art styles that can handle low pixel, low poly right through the spectrum. Do you know what I mean? Like, their art styles don't necessarily require high-end graphics to look good. Like, Animal Crossing, say what you want, it nails its charming little aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the characters look like they got felt. Like, you know, some of the characters that have fuzz look like they're covered in fuzz. You know, the octopuses look like octopuses, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so I think that, to me, is more important by far than it is driving polygons. But
yeah, it's like the age-old thing of style over polygons, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
I guess
polygons.
Sticking with PC gaming, World of Warcraft Shadowlands, Blizzard has finally revealed the release date for World of Warcraft's 8th expansion, Shadowlands, as October 27th. Shadowlands sees players adventure into another realm after Sylvanas Windrunner, that's certainly a real name, destroys the Lich King's Helm of Dominion. domination, sure. Players must help rebuild the Shadowlands and fix death across the world of Warcraft. So, Adrian, how do you feel about it?
I'm so excited. I'm so hot for it. I'm so ready. Just throw me into the Shadowlands. Let's go.
Because you've been playing it with your partner. Are you still playing it?
Yeah. Been playing WoW Classic and WoW Retail. So I'm just like wowing on all fronts, hey? Like, yeah. It's been a lot.
Have you been looking at a lot of like...
I feel like I should play WoW at some point.
I mean, it's free to play. Like the first 20 levels are free to play, and Adrian and I had a good time when we kind of messed around with it a few months ago.
We messed around for one night. Yeah, you could play level 10. It was good fun.
It was. I said a little bit, but I mean, we're gonna play 14, which I'm looking forward to. I'm very excited to get back into that.
It's a trend with MMOs, with like WoW and Final Fantasy 14. Like the production quality keeps going up and up, and you'd think like to an outsider, they're just dragging it on, but they're really not. Like each expansion kind of acts as like a standalone game in and of its own, just using the same mechanics and the same kind of like art style. So yeah, pretty excited.
Right.
Blizzard still, because I remember Cataclysm had a very high, it was the highest subscriber count. Like that's when they had like 12 million subscribers or something.
When they peaked and then they shortly fell down.
And it's been like kind of, I think it looked like it was limping along for a while, but I don't know, maybe the stories we've seen around World of Warcraft, we've seen fewer obviously because there are fewer people interested in all the rest, but the free-to-play aspect seems to have rejuvenated interest, I guess, in the game to the point where it's getting by.
I would say Classic is renewed interest in it. Like, I mean, Heroine never goes out of style. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not as good as the first time you did it, and that's where WoW's at. So, like, people who play it are still doing it because they're addicted to it because they love what the game provides them in that kind of broader sense. But like, I think from a company point of view, Blizzard they haven't made a proper game since Overwatch, and even they lucked onto that. So, it really is a case of they're just kind of sticking to the guns and what they know makes money. And fine, they're a company, they're allowed to do that. But I don't know. I just think without WoW, I wonder if they could have even sustained this long. Like just some of the bad calls they've made over the last few years, and one hopes that doesn't then infiltrate the one that like they don't slay the golden goose.
Well, how much of that has to do with Activision more than Blizzard? Like, I feel like Activision would have
but I mean, how often can you keep blaming Activision for this? Do you know what I mean? Like, people can, but like it's still Blizzard saying, "Hey, we're trading on our social capital." And so it's that thing of like, it's nice to say that, and yeah, like a lot of the old heads are gone, and they'll push Kaplan out soon enough. But like, at some point, it's like, well, okay, they're a shell of them for themselves, but people will still buy their product. And I think Classic was a life raft in that sense. Like, I think they were surprised at how well that did. And Activision's starting to do all right in their own front again with Warzone. Like, Warzone to them has been a revelation just because of how popular it's been in a pretty now saturated, battle royale demographic. I don't know. I mean, if people are still on board with how many retcons Blizzard have put onto the thing, and you're still enjoying that format of like the MMO formula, especially in the West, hasn't changed for a very long time.
I mean, even
and anything that tries to
a lot of the same,
a lot of the
like Guild Wars 2 tried to rewrite the rule book, and
Guild Wars
obviously
2
it
was
just fell down.
One,
Like I think for normies it was compelling, but as soon as you get to late game where MMOs really flourish for their core audience, it just completely fell apart.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously been a lot of MMO games where they've tried something different, and I think you fall into the two archetypes. You're either an Eve or you're a WoW, and that's kind of as kind of really nasty and straightforward as that is. That they're kind of the two archetypes. Like Final Fantasy 14 did a bunch of great stuff with the formula, but it's still the formula, and it took them a complete relaunch. Like they didn't even half-ass it. They didn't even retcon anything. They literally blew up the world. Like they dropped a bomb. Dropped a meteor on the planet and just said, let's start again. Let's start fresh. And it was to their credit.
Ooh, you've just gone on mute, mate. I don't know what that was. You've just dropped out a little bit, so maybe we'll see how that...
But yeah, very excited for Shadowlands, and very excited for the narrative junk food that is going to be them bringing back all of these old dead characters, because they can. We're literally going into the realm of the
just
dead.
Cause.
So, can't wait. I'm actually genuinely excited. It's going to be real fun.
Heck yeah.
Last news story of the week. Organizers have announced that a hybrid digital and physical Gamescom will take place from Wednesday, 25th of August, until Sunday, the 29th of August, 2021 in Cologne and online. DevCom 2021 will precede Gamescom on Monday and Tuesday. The announcement follows the conclusion of this year's all-digital Gamescom, which showcased 370 partner presentations and reached more than 2 million simultaneous spectators during Gamescom opening night live. The opening show with Jeff Keighley, 1,000 companies also held a reported 3,200 online meetings during the event. It'll be interesting to see how that works, like how they kind of pull that off. Because with the online event, obviously, I said this about PAX the other day on Twitter, and I was like, this seems super like thrown together last minute, bit of a nightmare. And they admit, I think Luke Lancaster, the local content manager, was like, yeah, it's coming together pretty last minute, but I think it's because it's such a new thing that they've had to come up with. It won't create like the experience of going to PAX, because so much of the PAX for me is going to GA afterwards and seeing Adrian scull a full jug of pink gin. I think that's really core to the PAX Australia experience.
The real PAX experience.
Fully.
But I mean, I'm excited to see, like, props to all the event managers out there, not just throwing it in the ring and going, next year, you know? Like, props to them for trying something new.
I mean, I remember when we were super early on and we were saying GDC was like postponed, and I'm like, is that what we're calling cancel culture now? Just being postponed. I was postponed. That's what it feels like to go back to uni. My life has been postponed. That is a wrap on the gaming news headlines of the week. Stick with us though. We've got more video game goodness coming up in just a. Oops. I'm going to try that sentence again because I accidentally hit the wrong button. What am I hitting? That one. Stick with us.
Just an oop.
Look, we're still coming to terms with the format. Stick with us. We've got more video game goodness coming up in just a bit.
What's the first thing you think of when you see and hear this? For a lot of people, it'll be something iconic in genre-defining like Resident Evil or Street Fighter. For others, it'll be something a bit more recent like Monster Hunter or Phoenix Wright. If you love your action games, there's the things like Onimusha or Devil May Cry. For the slightly older crowd, there's the many different iterations of Mega Man. Capcom are known for a lot of iconic and fascinating properties, but they're also home to many cult hits, such as Rival Schools, United by Fate. Rival Schools was one of Capcom's earliest attempts at a 3D, fully polygonal fighting game at a time where the industry was starting to transition from 2D backgrounds and sprite work, yet also during a time where 2D fighting games were at their most expressive and beautiful. To put this into some context, Rival Schools was originally released in 1997, the same year that Capcom released the last Darkstalkers game, Vampire Savior, and the first two versions of Street Fighter III, all of which ported 2D hardware in some amazing ways. On a basic level, Rival Schools doesn't try to push 3D in ways that feel like a gimmick. You can move in and out of the background, but that's just about it. It does take advantage of the space to allow you to pop opponents into the air, juggle them, sort of like the Versus Series aerial rave mechanic. It also shares some DNA with Street Fighter, featuring a countering system that's similar to the recently introduced Alpha counter system, but it stands out on its own thanks to two key factors. The first is the game's emphasis on teamwork. Much like with the Versus games, you select two characters to battle it out, but unlike in those games, you can't take out during fights, you play rounds with one character at a time. Think of it like SNK's King of Fighters series, but only just kind of. Instead, the second character acts more like an assist, and depending on the character, actually can do more than just a team-up attack. Some characters offer healing abilities, while others can offer you more charges on your super meter. Hell, even one in particular can even do damage to you if you're feeling frisky. The neat thing about this is, if you ever feel like switching it up, you absolutely can. At the end of every round, you have the option to switch characters and see how both characters work as a primary and secondary. It's a good way to encourage you to try out the cast and see what team combinations work best. The other factor is that Rival Schools, for a fighting game in the late 90s, actually has a plot. It's something that's actually featuring as an element of the game, as opposed to being just a throwaway thing to justify the theme. Every fight in the arcade game has a brief story interlude between fights, and even if the story itself isn't the greatest, it's far more of an effort than most games of its era. And justifying that story is actually a pretty exciting cast. Sure, they're more or less a collection of archetypes and tropes, but they're all super exciting and fun to play as. You've got your shonen hot-blooded protagonist, your cool-headed school council member, foreign exchange students, biker gangs, overly excited PE teachers, and even a certain schoolgirl that made her debut only a year prior. On top of that, the game does wonders with its personality, especially when the team-up attacks are as fun and vibrant as they are here. And yet that isn't what makes Rival Schools truly memorable. Where the game really stands out is its amazing and weird PlayStation port. Compared to other fighting games at the time, Rival Schools' port stands out as being more than what you'd expect, not just because of how it attempted to convert an arcade game to the PlayStation, but how it attempted to expand upon the original release in one of the most unique and interesting ways possible. Because you see, Rival Schools doesn't come on just one disc, it comes on two. 2 discs for a fighting game. The first disc, the arcade disc, is fairly straightforward. It's more or less a complete port of the arcade game, retaining all the story cutscenes between fights, even adding voiceover during your segments. Unlike in the arcade version, you can freely choose your characters if you don't wish to engage in the plot, and you've got a few hidden characters to play as. The second disc, known as the Evolution disc, is a bit more interesting. It too has a version of the arcade game, just about all the story cutscenes, but it makes up for it from a lot more in terms of mode and content. To put this into perspective, most fighting game ports at the time would never really have much more than a versus and training mode. If you're lucky, you would have like a league or a tournament mode. Hell, even most Capcom ports didn't go as hard as Rival Schools did at the time. Clearing the game with multiple characters and difficulties unlocks extra mini-games and modes that are a fun distraction and a good alternative to the fighting action. Aside from the aforementioned league and tournament modes, which are pretty cool, there's even a full-blown tutorial mode that actually goes through the game mechanics, which was almost unheard of in the late 90s. Yet even that's not the craziest thing this game has. The Japanese version of the game includes what effectively amounts to a school simulation mode, known as School Life. It's more or less kind of a visual novel, kind of a dating sim, that kind of thing. You play as a customized character, join one of the 5 schools in the game's world, and take part in school activities over the course of a year, developing relationships with the other members of the cast. Once you've completed it, you can take that customized character into the game proper and battle it out. It was so successful that Capcom even released an updated version of the game that not only included more characters, but expanded on this School Life mode. There was a rumor that Capcom were going to bring this mode over to the Western version of the game, but didn't due to the requirements of the translation at the time. The only hint of it ever existing in the Western version are the 24 bonus characters you can unlock, which are more or less the custom characters you can play as in that game. All this is important because up to this point, Capcom had a reputation for some less than stellar fighting game ports to the PlayStation. It's especially painful as this was at a time where they were at their creative peak when it came to the genre. If it wasn't understandable things like animation frames or sound clips being cut due to technical limitations, it was removing fundamental mechanics and changing the core of the game. So as an example, the legendary Marvel tag team fighters of the time famously dropped the tag mechanic for their PlayStation 1 ports, leaving the second character as a glorified assist that you couldn't select. It totally changed the feel and vibe of the game, and these versions are by far the ways you do not want to experience them. What helped is the arcade version of Rival Schools was designed for hardware that's more or less similar to the original PlayStation. Sort of like how Namco had an arcade port that was kind of the same thing, which basically resulted in arcade ports that didn't feel as compromised and actually really close to the original game. Granted, the PS1 port doesn't look quite as nice or have all the sound, and there is more loading, but playing it on PlayStation, well, Rival Schools is weirdly enough pretty close to its arcade counterpart, and that's kinda something. Sadly, Rival Schools doesn't really leave that much of a legacy. Arguably the biggest thing about the game was it was only the second game to be directed by a guy called Hideaki Itsuno, a man who would go on to not only direct some great fighting games, but also redefine the action genre and take it in some fantastic directions, but also in some divisive ones. Over the years, Itsuno said he wants to make a new entry in the series, but given his interest and how long it takes the man to make anything these days, not exactly holding my breath here. Rival Schools did spawn a sequel, however, known as Project Justice in this part of the world. It was an arcade and Dreamcast game which continued the story and introduced some cool new characters. Mechanically, the fights are now 3-on-3, which means you now have a second assist and another character switch between during rounds. You also have the ability to interrupt team-up attacks in a quick minigame, which adds to the tension and excitement of each fight. Unfortunately, that's the last time we'd see any of the Rival Schools cast or plot in their own game. In the years since, a handful of characters in the series have more or less been relegated to either appearances in crossover games, or show up as cameos or references in others. Neither Rival Schools or Project Justice have been re-released digitally in any form, save for a Japanese PlayStation Store release of the original game. But maybe the future of the series is a little brighter. Capcom recently announced that Akira from the series is joining Street Fighter V in 2021, making her the first character who debuted in that series to join the prestigious fighting game franchise. At the end of it all, Rival Schools is the perfect game to be called a cult hit. It's got some great mechanics, a cool cast of characters, and enough personality that it's lasted through the years as part of the Capcom fighting game universe. It's left its mark in more ways than one, and if anything else, gave us a fantastic home port that felt way ahead of its time. With Capcom still going through something of a renaissance, I doubt we'd ever get anything new from the franchise in this day and age, but of all the fighting games and franchises to pull something from, Rival Schools is definitely one of the cooler ones that more people should be aware of.
You're back with us here on New Game Plus TV, live on Twitch, or you might be hanging out with us on C31, C44, or listening to us as a podcast. My name's Cringe. I'm here with Adrian, Jason, and Millie. And Adrian, we had been looking forward to Crystal Chronicles for so long. So Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a weird stepchild of, I mean, there's a lot of weird stepchildren of Final Fantasy, but of that series, it was on the GameCube in 2000.
Final Fantasy is weird.
It is weird. Oh, I mean, that's true. The mainline series is kind of fucked up. But
I just don't get it.
Crystal Chronicles was the big offshoot, though. I mean, you've got mainline RPG Final Fantasy, and then you've got Crystal Chronicles being like kind of Diablo-ish style gameplay. With you had to have 4 Game Boy Advances with the link cables bought separately to play it. Like, I guess with what most people would consider to be its proper design. Because it had a single player mode, but it wasn't really made for single player. It was made for 4 players.
Legit. So it was like the only way to play multiplayer. You couldn't play with the GameCube controllers. You had to get multiple Game Boy Advances. So if you want to play 4-player, you needed to essentially make this Frankenstein Wii U in 2003, hook them all up with link cables. You wouldn't need a separate game card. So the way that the technology kind of works is that it streams like map info and basic info to the GBA display. But that's how you would play multiplayer. You would have an aspect of cooperation for everyone on the team, obviously, to finish the game, to finish a level, a stage. But then there would be kind of these sidebar like goals. It's like you need to do more magic damage. You need to not get hit, or like stuff like that. And the person who gets the most points gets to leave with the most, they get first choice as to what their level up is at the end, basically. And so it was this really fun twist on co-op competitive sort of dungeon crawling with a Final Fantasy skin over the top, basically. It was not a very well polished game. It was a bit of a mess.
Sounds a bit messy.
It was charming, though. It was a charming mess.
It was. I mean, I think Donna Burke absolutely led... She lent a lot of charm to the game. So she has this sort of like Scottish, Irish-ish sort of voiceover that she does.
It's all the same to you people, huh? All the same to you people, is it?
No, I said ish.
It's all right. Doesn't matter.
It's better than saying Irish and British, because I know that that's a no-go, okay? I'm throwing that out there now. But yeah, so Donna Burke is a voice actor. She voices like the Shinkansen in Japan. She's on a bunch of video games and
it's her?
Metal Gear Solid,
right?
That's her voice on the Shinkansen?
That's her voice on the... Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, and she's
welcome to the Hokkaido Shinkansen.
She's so sarcastic and funny. Oh no.
That's a big mood. I just want to travel again. That Wanderlust.
Yeah. But no, so Donna Burke does a bunch of the voiceover for introducing each stage. In the remaster, obviously a lot of graphical improvements have been made. So you've got high resolution textures. It's running at 1080p on PS4 by the looks. I think we'll get into the multiplayer problem in a bit, but the general setting of the world, Adrian, I mean, do you want to go through what is the storyline of it?
Yeah, so like I still kind of don't understand exactly what they're trying to go for with the story, other than just like you dropped in this
Square Enix game
where, but it's interesting because it's quite hands off. Like you'd be used to a very hands on story with a Final Fantasy game, but this one it's like you dropped into this world, you have a family that you choose, and then you're kind of just like off on your caravan fighting in these dungeons, and then your family are just writing to you, and you can like give them sassy passive aggressive replies, or like build a relationship with them nicely, send them gifts and stuff like that. But the story is kind of like, I mean, it's crystals, as Final Fantasy always is. There's crystals. You've got to collect some substance that's going to save the world from basically becoming poisoned.
You get a drop of myrrh in your chalice to refuel the crystal to keep the barrier over your town so that monsters don't come in and kill all... Oh no, not monsters, poison. The entire world is covered in poison.
Yeah, it's effluvium or something, yeah.
It's like COVID.
Yeah.
A little bit too.
So I never played these games.
But
it's kind of just like
Gladys Barrett-Killian confirmed a Moogle, but that's okay, yeah. Like...
Heraclean.
Jeez. Yikes, mate. So that, I guess that's kind of the setting. The gameplay is really just like a Final Fantasy Diablo Light. Like, literally, you know, you guys don't have phones. Now you can basically play that game on your phone. Because Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered is on PS4. Well, not at the moment, but we'll get to that in a sec. PS4, Switch, iOS, and Android. Now, I think it's worth pointing out, it's a compelling opportunity for mobile users because there's nothing really this sort of meaty and polished on mobile.
Than Raid Shadow Legends, apparently.
I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of Final Fantasy games that are on mobile, but they're like $20 each. This is actually free. Yeah. So you can get the first 3 dungeons and play through them for free. There's nothing stopping you doing that.
Exciting.
I think the parallel is if you enjoy something like Dragalia Lost, like it's kind of similar in vibe and polish. Kind of. It's just old.
Yes, I mean,
just old.
It's not gacha, obviously. Like Dragalia Lost it focuses so much on the gacha side of it. And the polish, I would say Dragalia is still more polished than this. But yeah, you're right. Like that,
it's got the benefit of being new.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing, like, you know, they remastered, like they brought up the game, they scaled it up, like it looks nice. It's got the old art style still, and the art style does hold up and all of that, but it's kind of like, it's obviously just like a bit of an up-res. With the addition of multiplayer, which I think you're about to speak to, Jack.
Yeah. So in single player,
that's where things get a bit dicey.
Yeah, I mean they're dicey at the moment in Australia, New Zealand specifically. So in the original, we spoke about that weird Frankenstein Wii U situation before. In the remaster, there is no couch co-op. There is exclusively online multiplayer, and so
so bad.
I get why they were. It's difficult because they were not going to make their money back on the PS4 and Switch versions of this. So they needed to push for crossplay. They needed to play for mobile launches. And that, I think, probably is what blew out the release timeline for them because they were like, the business case is not here. No one gives a shit about this weirdly obscure game. I want Asahi. God, that's so rude.
I get it because I mean, if you were going to keep the same system, because obviously the reason why they had Game Boy Advances as the multiplayer control on the original is that you have all that menu space that you need to access to really get your characters' items and spells and all of that sorted. And to translate that, you'd have to have like some sort of smartphone connectivity with the TV to like be able to do that. So I get why it's online only.
It literally would have been great if it on the Wii U. Work. Like they could have launched it on the Wii U and it would have been perfect. Like, why did they not do that?
I can't help but feel like you do make a good point there, Adrian. But I can't help but feel like a Jackbox style system would have worked. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially if it's available on mobiles. Well, again, this is the thing. You start talking about Japanese companies and their like programming capabilities and stuff like that, and you know, then you're in a bad spot because like it's just not what they're known for generally. But I feel like, I think I agree with you when you say that it seems confused on who this was aimed at and how they intended to make their money back on it. Because like the only 2 people I know who know about Crystal Chronicles, like U2, Cart. And I think that's the end of the exhaustive list because maybe we were the only people who could afford GBA link cables in those days. So
I just play single player like a sad boy.
No, I only played it in single player as well. So I actually think that the single player game is quaint. It's not great. It is quaint. I think that the way that you go through the levels, you're not going to go in being like, this is going to be a really polished and engaging experience. It's a nice autopilot game. It's a very atmospheric game as well. A lot of the dungeons, the environment design, the art style has held up really, really well. I don't love that they've literally just upscaled all of the textures. I think that they had a lot more leeway to do a lot more with this art style. But I get that they were probably like, we got to save money on this shit because it's blowing out the budget that they probably attributed to it originally. So I enjoy playing it in single player. And indeed, I'm not sure if you're seeing the Twitch footage that I'm playing. I picked the twinkiest goddamn character that I possibly could because basically there's like 4... Don't look at me like that, Millie. Okay, don't.
And then you just watch the Cupo for like 50 minutes. It's like the rest of the game just saws the background.
You can haircut from Google.
I needed to make sure I got all the footage to do the review for. Anyway, there are 4 different races. It is Clava, Selkie, Yuke, and the gnome people. But no one gives a shit about the gnome people. They suck.
Lilith, I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, what you
Yeah,
just
which is
said.
all based on European mythology, which is what the kind of the appeal of the game was. That kind of folklore-y and this was that era too. You know what I mean? Like this was the era where a lot of the games were starting to base themselves. Japanese games were starting to base themselves on European folklore. Not that they hadn't done it before, but this was not long after this. It was like PS3 had folklore as like a launch title and all that kind of stuff. So it would have been not long after or thereabouts the time when Sphere and stuff like that came out.
True.
So it dates itself a little bit in that sense, in that like you can definitely tell that was when the Japanese were so hugely influenced by European folklore, and it still continues today, but there was just a huge push, especially in the gaming space, along those kind of myths and mythos and stuff like that.
Yeah, like that's what really carries the single player. The music by Kumi Tanioka, I believe, is the composer for this one, and she does a fantastic job. It's an unusual soundtrack because it uses a lot of instruments and a lot of arrangements that place it in. I think Polygon did a video on like where a lot of the music, they did like a full-on breakdown of like where the music came from.
It sounds like no other Final Fantasy game.
No.
It's got that folk kind of vibe to it, like so many like flutes and stuff like that. It feels like you've just walked into like an old tavern somewhere and
somewhere in Europe.
I wasn't alive. I wasn't alive back then.
I am 4 years old. But yeah, like the single player dungeon crawling, the dungeons themselves, I enjoy them. The character design is pretty straightforward. The boss design, I think some of the games of this era suffer a lot from the main gameplay is really, really easy, and then the boss fights can be really tedious and exhausting, and just like it's not balanced really well. And they didn't do a lot to address. They didn't do anything to address that in what I've played. But obviously, a lot of people looked to this game for the multiplayer. That was a really big part of it on the GameCube, and it is just not usable at all. I mean, we lasted in a session maybe 30 seconds, Adrian.
We had about 2 nights of frustration where we had lined up that we were going to play the game. It was going to be great. It was going to be a big old nostalgia fest. And it literally doesn't work. We thought it was our internet. But you jump into a game, you last 2 seconds, or 2 to 30 seconds, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then the game boots you out, disconnects you from the game. And we thought it was us. Turns out it is a widespread issue, I think, for Australia and maybe New Zealand.
Yeah.
But definitely Australia. And it's been removed from the Nintendo eShop now as a result.
And PlayStation Store. So the
there you go.
full versions are gone. You can't buy them at the moment.
Yeah, and so that kind of really goes into the idea that, I mean, so not only did they release this like so broken title, they had to like delisting a title is a huge deal.
Yeah.
That either came from Nintendo QA saying, you screwed us. Like, we knew that, the big publishers get a little bit of leeway on it. They'll say, your big boys will turn around and say, we're releasing this game on your platform. And most of the platform holders will just go, well, it's X publisher. We trust their game. If you're an indie dev, you have to hit more kind of stringent conditions on that. And so for Squeenix, one of the big companies in the world, to then have to pull the game down, like, I mean, that's huge. And that's without even going into like the bad balancing around like rewards and stuff like that. So it's like, not even if you did get the multiplayer working, you still got to deal with the way that it handles like handing out rewards for bosses and stuff.
It's such a nightmare. So the way that it does, I guess instancing would be a good way to put it, is you are in someone's game. You don't gain beyond the level up bonuses at the end of each level, which are pretty minor. You might get an extra inventory pocket, you might get an extra heart, or like a +1 or 2, maybe 3 if you're really lucky, to magic, strength, or defense. You get those bonuses, but you don't get the Mer, so you can't progress in your storyline, which, again, the story isn't the big part of it. It's sort of just like, here's the background of the world, and then make your own adventure. And I get that it kind of pushes that. Like at the end of each year, going out to get Mer to, replenish the crystal, you go back home and you have this big party, and maybe have a few too many. It's not something that I've done recently at all. And then it goes through all of the journal entries, being like, I did this here, and goes through your encounters. And that's kind of, again, quaint is the word that I keep going back to. It's not super compelling. It's not something that is like, yeah, I feel really attached to my story, especially when after every interaction, it's like, do you want to open the journal? No, bitch. Like,
I think it's one of those games that intentionally, it doesn't let its single player story get in the way, because it knows that you're meant to be sharing that with other people. I think it's meant to be enhanced by other people. And that's where someone, like you said, the tedium of the boss fights, like, I think it's designed that way because it wants you to play with other people. It's like an arcade game, it wants you to like get someone else to put a coin in to join up with you and co-op. Like, I think that's by design. So it's a shame. Like I know that the game literally not working online, as far as connectivity issues go. Like we're one region in the world, but it's kind of sad to see after a game like Final Fantasy 14. I was watching a documentary with the people behind that and how much they worked to try and avoid a mistake like that happening again and trying to fix that game after it launched to in a pretty bad state. So I just feel bad, I guess, like that from a reputation perspective, like Square Enix, like this has happened again, this kind of thing. It's a smaller game, but still. It
was certainly a smaller launch. Like they had far less fanfare about it. They've done not a whole lot of social media marketing. The way that the multiplayer, like the multiplayer rewards you mentioned, Jason, kind of suck. The multiplayer implementation across the board is a nightmare because your PlayStation friends or your Switch friends don't, you can't use them to play with. You need to add them as a Crystal Chronicle friend.
Add a friends code,
everything is on Square Enix's server, so you need to add them via a 6-minute temporary invite code or a 16-digit permanent code or something, and that's how you you follow them by doing that. Because this is a nightmare where you have to follow them and have them follow you back, and then that's how you become friends. And it's like none of that is explained.
Like I never left Twitter.
Oh my god! Implying that people I follow I'm friends with. A bit of a stretch.
Rude.
Yikes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to when they fix the server issues, i.e. put a server in Australia, because I think that's probably the biggest problem. The ping, the jitter, so the variance, I guess, in getting the info to the server and back. That, I think, probably is where the problem is, where they've just had too little of an allowance, where it's like, oh, you're a little bit too all over, booted. It also sucks that when you make once you make a server, you can't make a server shortly after that. You have to wait to time out and then make a new server, which sucks.
Yeah, it's like they think you're a bot. It's like they want you to do a capture check or something before you make another server.
They're trying to control how much activity there is on their server by just shafting players. That's literally all they've done. It's frustrating. It's exhausting for them as well.
We really wanted to enjoy it. That's the thing.
I still enjoy parts of the single player, and I think the world is really fascinating, and the music is really fun, and the gameplay is, not such an impediment, at least when you're playing in single player. Maybe they might patch that fucking shit in multiplayer. But for now, you literally can't buy it. I think if you've got an iPhone or, an Android phone that'll play it, sure, go and download it because it's free and you can mess around in single player in some of the early dungeons. The touch controls are okay. They're not the best, but they're okay. And the graphics, for a phone game, we've seen much better phone games, but it's not a bad looking game on an iPhone. I don't know. Is there anything else that you think you should add, Adrian?
I think just, it's one of those things where as a kid playing this game when it came out on the GameCube, I just didn't have the budget to buy link cables. I didn't have mates that had link cables and Game Boy Advances. So I was really excited for this to be the opportunity. Yeah. This was the opportunity for us to actually play the game the way that we wanted to play it when we were kids. And so that's unfortunate. So I think when lockdown is over, I'm just going to eBay a copy of it on GameCube and grab a couple link cables, and we'll just have to do it locally the old school way.
Yeah, I think I've still got my copy somewhere. I might have to dig it up, but yeah, I mean,
I'm sure you do.
You find it on Wii. You get a copy, chuck it in a Wii because Wiis are so easy to come by nowadays. GameCubes maybe not. Link cables maybe not. That'll be interesting.
Still got my GameCube. Still got a link cable. So
okay,
good to go.
Wow, look at over here. Look at me. I got money for a link cable. Ooh.
Eventually, I got money for a link cable. Just one.
Single. I can only afford one.
Just one.
Oh, God. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Crystal Chronicles released, but it is not currently available on PlayStation 4 or Switch. It will probably be at a later date, but you can download Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered right now on iOS and Android. Multiplayer is still kind of dodgy though, so really just play the free version. If you're really into the single player experience in the dungeons, you might be inclined to drop the $20, $30-ish on the iOS full version, I guess. But yeah, it's not available on consoles at the moment. Hopefully they resolve those server issues soon. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. Stick with us. We've got more video game goodness coming up in just a little bit. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. You might be hanging out with us on C31, C44, or as a podcast. I'm Cringe. I'm here with Millie, Jason, and Adrian. And Millie,
hello.
Beyond Blue is a mental health service, but Beyond Blue is also a video game that you've been playing recently.
Indeed, I have, because it was on sale and I bought it. So I played it on the PlayStation 4, but it's available on PC, Xbox One, and the Apple Store, which I did not know, but I know my iPhone would probably take off if I tried to play this game.
I thought you were saying it'd be on like Mac or something, and I'm like, yeah, I love to Command F in Mac.
It probably actually is on Mac, but I would not play it on my Mac because it would just fly away. But basically, Beyond Blue is a game that's set in the future, like a nearish future, where they play as a deep diver scientist named Mirai, who's super cute, by the way. She's got like such a bubbly personality, and she's wearing this new high-tech dive suit, which allows her to stream what she's seeing in the ocean directly to viewers while communicating with them, with two other scientists. And what they're doing is basically about ocean conservation. So they're looking at how the corals are changing. They're looking at how, with the changes in the coral, can they use this coral to like help with cancer patients? They're looking at using scientific robots to identify changes in the water temperature. Is that affecting ocean health? But you, as the player, you play as Mirai, and she is really interested in this pod of sperm whales. And the first thing that you do, as soon as you're put in the game, you find your sperm whales, and they are life-size. So you're this little tiny human swimming around this huge sperm whale, and they emulate the clicks of a sperm whale, which is they can actually damage you, sperm whale clicks, because they're so loud, through the controller. So every time the sperm whales click and groan, your controller is vibrating. It's just like it's so.
It sounds like Last of Us 2. Oh.
Yeah. It's a bit like that, but it doesn't make any noise, but like the controller vibrates. But they obviously, this game, you can't die, you can't do anything. Basically, it all drills down into walking simulator. It's one of those games. There's no set path, but there's a very set goal. If you just keep paddling around, you don't go anywhere. It doesn't become night. You don't die. You don't get eaten by a shark or anything. But you just put in an area, and your job is to just give the viewers a good show about the ocean. So you just sort of zoom around, you scan things with your little scan tool, you zoom towards sea creatures, you scan them, you figure out what you're meant to do. So some scenes you're just meant to tag them, other scenes you're just meant to document their health, how healthy they are. And then one scene you get to see a little baby sperm whale swimming around, and it's a very relaxing game. Like I played Horizon Zero Dawn before I played this game, and I got so bored, I got frustrated, so I had to go to this game, and I was just instantly at peace.
Robo dinosaurs to Zen.
Yeah, like literally, it was just could not go from one extreme to the other any more intensely. Like
the disparity, I love it.
Mm-hmm. It really does. From what I've heard other people say as well, it seems like it's a more easygoing kind of Subnautica / Abzu. It seems to be there's like a small kind of vein of these sort of like underwater exploration games at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very much Subnautica without the like leviathans and threat of death and everything. You just chill. You just scan dolphins, basically. It's just
so I imagine
fun.
pretty good game to just kind of like pop your headphones on and just get immersed in it, just vibe out.
Absolutely. It plays like it's nice. I think from what I can recall, because it's just so chill, I'm just like swimming around scanning fish. It plays like some sort of like what's that drum called? Like that tin drum. It's a bit like that really relaxing sort of music in the background. Like think of an ocean sequence, it's that sort of noise playing in the background. And what really surprised me when I finished the game, because it doesn't take long, I finished it in about a day. It's a very short game, but it's just pure relaxation. It was actually inspired, and it features clips from Blue Planet 2. So the documentary about the ocean. So it's taken like it's basically a walking documentary. It's just man, I could just warble on about how chill it is because it's just so chill. And even in moments where like there was this, is this a spoiler podcast or what's going on?
Probably not super spoiler, but I mean,
okay, well, there is like it's not. Oh yeah, it is a spoiler. So, but just basically, it leads you towards. You follow this whole family of the sperm whales after you've done your work for the other two scientists. You want to follow Mariah's story with these sperm whales that she's been following for so long, trying to document this family unit. And it's just at the end, just unfortunately, you see at the end the mother just floating dead.
Jeez.
I'm not going to go into how she died, but
like to go.
But you swim towards her, and she's just floating there, and the poor little baby's trying to like nudge her up, and you're just like, oh god.
I find many of those nature docos can be that sad though. Like I've legit cried to like seal crying out for their mum that's just died. Like it's rough. It's rough out there. Mother Nature's cruel. So how do they like paste the documentary bits with the game? Like how does that work?
So you start the game in a dive, and once you've completed your objective, so you've seen your sperm whales, you've collected your coral samples, you've seen the dolphins, documented how healthy they are. Mariah gets picked up by this high-tech submarine, which she's living on during this dive period, and you control her in the submarine. She's very stiff, but it's more about the swimming. But then you can sit down in the chair and you sort of talk with your other scientists about the dive and what is expected of you of the next dive. There's also an ongoing story about her and her sister, that sort of thing. So it's like you're living this sort of dual life of like ocean stuff. This is my job, but then the real life is going on above the ocean. So it's like, do you really put your heart and soul into dealing with your sister's issues, or do you just go and then go back to diving?
Is there choice
so
around that?
So there's like a little bit into it. There is, yes. You get to choose what Mariah says.
Well, I mean,
yeah, but it's sort of superficial, I guess.
Yeah.
But I did feel very bad for the sister because it felt like I was ignoring her.
Well, I mean,
even
I was just like, I just want to look at whales, okay?
With a game like this, it's completely fair as to why you would, because the gameplay that we've got playing on Twitch at the moment, it is my concern with games like this is that I can feel, I don't know if claustrophobic is quite the right word, like when you're in the ocean, that feeling of like, or claustrophobic, like drowning, basically, where it can be a bit overwhelming. But I don't know, the way that it's sort of presented visually makes it seem really, really like not as confronting, I guess. It's going for very much.
You feel very, very chill. I think it wants to sort of ease you into the ocean. It doesn't want you to be like, bam, here's the ocean, you're going to drown, sharks, that sort of thing. Which is, that like, especially living in Australia, you get that sort of threat of like the ocean. Sharks, everything was going to kill you.
The ocean.
That sort of
I love getting dunked at the
ocean.
It's a threat, the ocean. It's going to fucking come for you.
You're just getting dunked on at the Gold Coast, basically, that sort of thing. But you feel so chill. And even when, because this is in the near future, Mariah's dive suit can sustain depths. She even goes down to like the really deep depths, and you still feel chill. Like, it's very dark, but you're still like, Mariah is safe. I don't need to protect her. She is okay. I'm just going to do my job.
Well, it's literally, you were like, you just need to put on a good show for the audience. And in that sense, like,
yes,
basically an OnlyFans, but at like how many, like, thousands of feet under the sea. It's literally what this is, but it's really relaxing. She does
have a very good butt, so.
I mean, maybe that's the sequel. I don't know. Maybe that's a spin-off. Coming up later on Millie likes characters with big butts. Like, how many? Every single time you're like, I'm really enjoying this game, and then I'm like, okay, so do you want to be crushed by her thighs? And you're like, yes, I do. Like, every time.
How about underwater?
Big meaty thighs.
Jesus. So
no, I'm not into that.
Under-sea.
I guess that was terrible. I guess to wrap up,
get out of here, Adrian.
Beyond Blue is a very much a relaxing, basically walking simulator,
Absolutely.
but the music, the graphics, like
It
all
is
of it
a
comes
walking
together
simulator.
to be a really compelling experience if you just want to chill, right?
If you just if you're really frustrated with the game, just quit that game, go to Beyond Blue, and just swim around, skin some fishies for a bit. Like there's no obligation, there's no time limit. Just swim around, scan some fishies, look at Mariah's butt, like change the colors of her suit. Just have a good time. Just go look at some dolphins. They're so beautiful.
Beautiful.
Go on. It's fun.
Beyond Blue is available now on PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Apple Arcade, actually. So if you're on... and Switch. Pretty much everything. So it's on pretty much
It is
everything.
on Switch? Oh,
Yeah, by the looks. I might actually download it now. I've got
Nice.
Apple Arcade. You're hanging out
It's
with
pretty
us.
fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, fun, and then there's fun, and then there's I just kind of want to vibe for a little bit. Like, I don't want to be
Chill
super
fun.
invested. I
It's
just
like
want,
Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
It's chill fun.
yeah, like this morning, I did not want to play, wake up and play a platform where it's difficult platform. I do not have the brain power for this at the moment. I just want to hang out and get the cutting board recipe. I'm just really chill about Animal Crossing. You're hanging out with us here on.
DIY.
Oh, I'll make you one. Don't worry. I'll just send it to you.
You should have said that. It's. Please do. I really want that. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV. Stick with us. We've got more video game goodness coming up in just a bit. You're hanging out with us here on New Game Plus TV live on Twitch. Might be with us on C31, C44, or listening to us as a podcast. I'm Cringe here with Millie, Adrian, and Jason. It's a live show. That's why everything looks a little bit chaotic, and
We'll
whatever.
do it
It's fine.
live.
We literally are doing it live.
We're doing it.
One thing that, Jason, you've been doing lately is playing a lot of video games. We have a gamer on staff at New Game Plus.
I know, what a surprise.
You
On
were
staff.
you were
I'm
so
just on staff. I'm just on staff, just the guy who
Come
shows
on,
up.
don't do this.
Um,
But you were oh no, I'm not bitter at all about the fact that I've got all these reviews, and I'm like, okay, review them. Let's go. And the two that you're going to give us this week are Fairy Tale and Destroy All Humans. And I know you have affection for Destroy All Humans already, but Fairy Tale, you were like, I need to make sure that people know it's a Gust RPG. And I'm like, okay.
Yes, yeah, because it is okay. So Koei Tecmo announced they're going to do an anime crossover. Now, if you hear Tales, what's it? Atelier Riza,
the Atelier series,
those style of the Atelier series, that style of the JRPG. They've got their own kind of take on the Tales formula. Yeah, well, it's a company that makes it, and so Gust have been bought by Koei Tecmo. They're part of Koei Tecmo. So when you hear Koei Tecmo doing an anime property, you assume it's going to be a Musou game. Like One Piece, they made that for Namco. Berserk, that was a Musou game. So you hear Koei Tecmo, and you just assume it's going to be like a run around hack and slash. It's something like Fairy Tale, where they've all got magics and they've all got these different kinds of magics and all that. I mean, it lends itself to that One Piecey kind of formula, but it's not that. Like it's pure. Run around, stand in a line, hit the enemies, like a traditional RPG in a lot of ways. And I wasn't expecting that going in. So the big thing I would say is there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Like it's a well-made Gust RPG. I just wasn't expecting a Gust RPG. So when I start playing it, I'm like, what the hell?
What is this?
Yeah, because and you expect the usual, here's the map, here's the red, here's the blue, make the blue bigger than the red, or whatever the color. You know what I mean? You know how Musou games work. You know how Gust RPGs work if you've played one. They're all pretty similar. This has a simple grid system, so you've got 9 squares that different moves will hit different parts of that grid. So it's a formula that a lot of people are doing nowadays, and Gust didn't necessarily start it, but they've
committed to it.
Proponents of yeah, and so in this it's really obvious that it's similar to what's the second South Park game? Not Stick of Truth. What is it? The Broken But Whole.
Butthole.
Fractured But Whole.
Fractured.
Yeah. So that's a similar concept as well, but its grid is huge. It's a little bit more based on positioning and stuff as well. So it's got that semi-tactical mindset, but it kind of doesn't really matter. The grind in this game is easy, so it's not really a grindy RPG. Once you've got a certain level of strength, once you're 4 levels ahead of any given enemy, you can pretty much just body him without losing too much health. So it sits in this interesting thing where you can't grind it for hours, but at the same time, like to get the most out of it, you want to do all the side quests, you want to do all these little things, and you are there for how they're telling the story, and it's well voice acted, and they've animated a lot of the scenes, and it does a good one-to-one job of telling this particular arc, because I think that's one thing that so like especially the My Hero Academia game did really poorly, was watching the My Hero Academia anime tell the story of that arc was it was great. Like My Hero Academia, people sleep on it. It's so fantastic. But the game did such an awful job of it that I don't feel like they even really told the same story. Like they skipped so many things, and the way that they told it was boring. Even when I watched it on anime afterwards, I knew what to expect, but I still enjoyed the experience. The way that they do this, I don't feel like you need to go back and watch it. And it's a very specific choice, because a lot of times when they do anime games, they'll do the first arc. They want people to play this and then move on and watch the rest of the series. This, it comes in like a time skip that's probably 150, 200 episodes in. So it's like, it's ages into the series, and it's middle of a time skip where they've brought the game in. So you kind of have to be up to date. Like I had to catch up real quick, because there was just things I was referencing. I'm like, oh no, like why is this person here? Like who is this? How did this happen? So it really is the kind of the good and bad of it is it really is a game for fairy tale fans, and those kind of fans would usually enjoy RPG games. So there's a good crossover there, but you don't be fooled into thinking you can just pick this up and play it, and that you're going to understand specifically where it's coming from, because you're not. Like there's so much kind of if you haven't watched the series, you're starting right in the middle of, like, they're in their power peaks, like they're starting to peak up in their power, all the stories starting to kind of come to a crescendo. So it's not something you can pick up as a new fan of the series, but as like an old fan of the series, I guess it's really good, and it's a good Gust RPG, but I mean, you'd already know the story, you already know everything. So again, it's going to come down to how much you enjoy playing these kind of RPGs over, say, it being a good introduction to the series. That said, it's well made. Everything about it has that same kind of charm, the silliness of the characters. I disagree with some of the translation choices, but that's me being a weeb. But yeah, that's kind of how I present it. It's definitely for fairy tale fans, but I think because it's a Gust RPG, you've also then got to be a fan of Gust RPGs. So I hope it does well for them, because it is a well polished and well made game, but it's a niche in a niche, and I just don't know how. So you're saying
you can't enjoy the game if you're not, like, if you're a big fan, like, if you enjoy Gust RPGs, like that format, that won't be enough. You need to be into fairy tale.
No, I think I would say that is probably the correct way to look at it. If you're a Gust RPG fan, it's a decent Gust RPG, well told. The story's familiar, so even if you know the basics of how that world works, you'll be okay. But I think as a fairy tale fan, like, it's already telling an arc. If you've finished Fairy Tail, you've already seen this arc.
Right.
It's an important time. They do a good job of telling that important time. It's a tournament arc, because every shonen anime has a goddamn tournament arc. But like, they do a good job of doing that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's more for the Gust fans than it is necessarily for the Fairy Tail fans. That said, it's still a really good game. I still enjoyed it. It's still well told. But I would recommend that you would get up to just look up Tenro Island. If they start talking about Tenro Island, you're in the right spot. You can play the game and you'll be fine from there.
So that one is available on, PS4, I imagine. Where else?
And Switch, I believe, as well.
Cool. So Fairy Tail.
Yeah.
Is it literally just Fairy Tail, the game?
Just Fairy Tail. So it's the name of the anime, Fairy Tail. That's it. Cool. And that's how you can tell they're not going for a second one or a third one, because there's no kind of tagline.
There's no like subtext or anything.
Yeah.
Subtitle.
Yeah. I watch Fairy Tail. I've heard good things about the anime.
Like it's fine. It's. I mean, we could do anime chat all day.
That's
but
another podcast.
It's a different podcast. Is it as well polished and as good as One Piece? Probably not. Like, is it as endearing? No. Is it as self-contained as Full Metal Alchemist? Probably not. It's good fodder. It has good arcs. Some of the designs are cool. It's just good fodder. I wouldn't say that it's a great anime. It's worth chucking on in the background if you're doing something else. But it's not like, say, One Piece or Full Metal Alchemist or these other shows that I would say are like must watches. But at the same time, there's also not 900 episodes like One Piece. So take it where you can get
it's
it.
It's a good thing. Like, There's so many episodes. Well, I mean, you speak very highly of FMA, and for that reason, I'm like, FMA, I feel like I probably could get through, because you say
72
more,
episodes is nothing.
So like, I can get by that. That's enough. Whereas like
look, okay, and then we'll move on to Destroy All Humans. Full Metal Alchemist is the quintessential shonen. It is tight. It's 72 episodes, which isn't much. The manga was tight. Like there was no wasted space. The art style is great. I love the art. I love their take on pre-World War One Europe. It's not actually that, but it is. I like the heartfelt moment. Like it tears your guts out sometimes, and it's not even a seinen. It's a proper shonen, and it tears your guts out sometimes. And the way that the characters deal with loss and the way they represent, honestly, if we're going to go full SJW, even the way they deal with their women's really good. Like one of the best characters in the show is the boy's teacher, and she did the same thing as them. She committed the same like cardinal sin spell that they did. And so her dealing with that and teaching them because they have that connection. Again, it's definitely worth a watch. If you're going to watch something on my recommendation, FMA. If you want fodder for the background, Fairy Tail's fun. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the distinction of the two.
Yeah, sweet.
Now, Destroy All Humans is a game that it's a series that kind of really passed me by. I didn't really get the sense of what it is. I got that it was not taking itself too seriously, but beyond that, I didn't really know much about it. The remake is, this is a remake of how old is this game?
I want to say like 2000. I want to say 2000 or something like that. It's a good question. Yeah. I genuinely, yeah. I genuinely don't know.
Doing it live.
That is a real, yeah, doing it live because that's how it works.
Does it have an anime? No.
Yeah. Because I remember playing it, but I can't remember if I was like end of school or I'd finished school. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to.
Yeah,
2005. So it was early 20s for me. Yeah. So I thought it might be. I definitely thought it might be after school for me. So it was cashing in on an era. This is just post X-Files. This is just this is pre proper internet. Post X-Files. So you have a world that's obsessed with aliens and UFOs and all of that kind of mystique and aesthetic. And they don't have the internet to kind of debunk it all. So it's that thing of you play as Cryptosporidium, who is a clone of all the whole Furon race are clones, right? So they're all cloned based off this base level of DNA. Now, years and years ago, they seeded the Earth with Furon DNA. So basically the reason that you're killing people and taking their brains is because you want to get more pure DNA, like DNA that's unaltered and been like not put through the cycles of the Furon DNA. So it's a pretty simple, thing. And then of course as time goes on, it's set in the 50s, so as time goes on, you're blowing up tanks, it's all Red Scare, it's all, mutilating cows and all of it is a kind of a parody of that era. Like it's definitely taken the piss of that era. So the controls are very of that era as well. Like remembering how to what the controls were and figuring it out and stuff is definitely unique in that it doesn't translate well to how we've been taught how to play games nowadays. That said, I found it easy to use. I only died a couple of times. There's the one, there's the mission that sucks, and it's the one that I'm pretty sure they cut from the original game. So they brought that back for it, and I know why they cut it, because it sucks. It's real hard. And so, and I was playing it on hard as well. So, yeah. Well, no, because, the thing is, from the story point of view, it does add to it. So I get why it's there. It kind of helps phase it out a bit. But, yeah, I can see why at the same time they got rid of it. But the story is basically, so you're here to collect all the DNA, you're taking on all these different things, and the thing that really stood out to me at the start was it has a disclaimer at the start saying, this was a game of its era, we haven't altered it in any way. It was the Looney Tunes disclaimer for, we'll show you the dancing frog, but we don't necessarily believe in minstrel shows. It was their way of not absolving themselves of guilt, but saying, this is of an era, please keep that in mind. But the question then becomes, why re-release it? And I don't even think... I don't remember a joke in there that was punching down. Most of it's punching up. Most of it was punching at societal attitudes of the 50s and the prevailing kind of zeitgeist and McCarthy era America and, American military industrial complexes that was starting. So all of its jokes, like even when it's like, you can read the minds of people, and when it's housewives fantasizing about Marilyn Monroe, like it was them going, oh, that's subverting the expectations. And yeah, it's a little bit more edgy boy it's a little bit more, revolutionary back in 2005. It's a little bit more edgy boy nowadays, but none of it was made specifically to kind of to push down. It's from memory. Like, I mean, I played the game in a pretty quick kind of measure. It only took me, it would have been 10, 12 hours maybe. But it's interesting that... Yeah, well, no, it does, because it's 2005, so it's still, the jokes are still... They're still told very bluntly. They're still told poorly, but I don't think the intention was ever to necessarily make that a thing. But yeah, like I think that it's the question becomes, why then re-release it? It's a 15-year-old game. Obviously, cultural attitudes have shifted to an extent, but I still think the intent of the series works. Like it's not trying to make fun of XY people. It's making fun of the wider culture. It's making fun of, the attitude of the cops and the attitude of, government overreach in, chasing out communists and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like it's unfortunate that it kind of felt the need to do that, but I also get why it was worried that some of what it said was a little bit too...
If you're getting Americans to play it, that would probably be a big part.
There's your answer. Yeah. We could talk about Twitter, US cultural hegemony for fucking hours and hours, but we won't, because I do like not being cancelled. Not that I care about Twitter, but like also America. America's like this giant like anus black hole, and everything just gets sucked in around it, and it becomes so compressed in this American kind of
singularity is what I'm hearing.
Grinder singularity, that's it. Stop the straights. But yeah, so I think, yeah, I think again, look, I still enjoyed it. I think the gameplay is fun. It holds up. It's a little bit more of a traditional borderline platforming, borderline run around action game.
So it's a third-person sort of thing, and the activities you're doing is kind of varied?
Yeah, so it's usually kill X people, do this, but there'll usually be like an objective attached to that. But most of it is just like play this map and commit murder. And then you can go back into those maps later and do like a free play version where you can pick up stuff and things like that. But usually you play your missions, you do that, and then you can go back and collect all of the collectibles and all that. So it's a very traditionally designed game. And whether you're going to have the nostalgia for it in the first place is going to dictate whether it's worth playing. But at the same time, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good fun. It's only like it's not even that expensive because it is a remake. Like they obviously didn't have to put that much time and energy to it. So if you see it cheap, I think it's definitely worth a pickup. But again, it's interesting to see how even in 15 years, the attitudes have shifted enough that a game like this had to kind of preface its whole game based on that. I reckon it's done well enough to have number 2. Number 2 was the better game from a gameplay and like the way that it actually handled itself perspective. So I'd be keen if they do make a number 2. But as it stands, I enjoyed playing it. I definitely don't regret my time with it. But yeah, just if that kind of stuff does bother you, maybe listen to the warning at the start.
I mean, if you're American, maybe listen to the warning at the start.
Yeah. Give me 30 seconds, and I'll fill the other ones in. Carrion, do play. Battletoads, if you are playing it for nostalgia, you will hate it. But if you're playing it for decent, like side-scrolling beat 'em up gameplay, you will love it. Maneater, if you see it cheap, it's good fun, but there's not much longevity in it. Was there another game that I've played lately? I don't know. I've just been playing too much State of Decay.
You've been playing a lot of games, yeah.
I have, and again, this is before we've even hit the season. You know what I mean? Like, how much is an Xbox Series X, Jack? Do you know how much they are?
I don't think anyone does. Like that's the joke.
No idea. Yeah. So I wonder if they use TGS as the data announcer. Anyway, that's a news discussion. But moral story is like at the moment it's all like here's the current gen version of this game, and it's like, oh, that's nice.
Is next gen even coming out this year at this point?
Yeah, it is.
I think for sure Xbox. Yeah, look, that's another podcast, Adrian, and I would happily have it with you any day of the week.
Anime next gen, let's go.
I still ride Jack over the fact that I called Switch Lite, and there's rumors of Switch Pro coming, and I'm just So I can just live off that Schadenfreude for so long.
I
so
really
like,
don't want
I can
that
have
to
the
be Switch
conversation
Pro.
about.
Like, but I can't say that it definitely won't happen because obviously I fucked up previously. So
Yeah.
it's kind of rough. Yeah.
Credibility in the toilet. Anyway, look, moral story is there are some good games out there, but I think if anything, that's why you're seeing a lot of the service games try and push into the market while there's that lull. And for them to suddenly, like you mentioned with Crystal Chronicles, they snuck it out. A lot of these games are just sneaking out. It's never a good sign. Like they obviously want to make enough money back on investment. They can say we've released it and stuff. Yeah, but like. You make your money you make most of your money in the first 2 weeks, and then in the second, in the third and fourth week, you make like another 50% of like your earnings over time. So that's the general formula from memory. And if they're sneaking it out for launch, doesn't exactly bode well for re-releases, but that's why everything's trying to be a service game, because then they don't have to release a completed game, and then they'll fix it in 2 years' time, and all the Destiny fans will say yay. So
even then, like hopefully they'll fix Crystal Chronicles a bit sooner than that. Like if they just,
I'm still getting targeted with
one
Chronicles
hope
ads.
because I think I posted my Instagram one to Twitter, and yeah, it's people are really disappointed. There were more people disappointed about Crystal Chronicles fuck up than I thought there would be. I thought that no one would even know this game came out because it is a niche
Just
game.
the comments on the ads give me community management anxiety.
They're like, so when are the servers going to be fixed? And you're like, a Square Enix like casual is like, shit. Just to mop up, Destroy All Humans, the remake is available now on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. You're playing on Xbox?
For which one? Sorry, Destroy All Humans. I was on Xbox, correct? Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then Carrion looks fucking creepy. Gonna be honest, shit, that game looks
so
weird.
Carrion is on Game Pass, but it's also on. I think
it's on Switch.
Steam. I'm pretty sure it's on Switch as well. Yeah.
But it's just such a weird looking game. It's such a gore thing, and I'm like, I thought I could handle gore, and then you play Carrion, and you're like, Jesus Christ, that is cooked.
It's but this is the thing. Like most of the games I've played recently, are just kill all humans. You know what I mean? And Carrion is just murder machine.
The
like
bar is low.
Again, it's a Devolver game, so just keep that in mind. It's edgy boy, but it's usually got a point. It's stylistic. It's stylish. It's told really well. The simple puzzles it has are great. I thought I wasn't doing a Carrion review. Moral story is it's a pretty good game. If you got Game Pass, it's free and it's 4 hours of your life. It's worth playing. So yeah.
If you're hanging out with us on Twitch live, hang around because Em and I are going to be visiting people's Animal Crossing islands in the Dream World. We only got a few codes, so we'll see how long the stream goes for, but that'll be kind of fun. I think Em originally was like, maybe we'll get drinks, and I'm like, Han, today I'm not getting drinks. That's not happening. I'm on ibuprofen today. That's how, edgy I'm feeling.
Has it kicked in yet?
It has kicked in, actually, and I'm really, really happy that it did.
Good.
So I'm feeling good. But yeah, that is a wrap on New Game Plus TV for this week. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you want to see more pre-recorded content, like potentially the recommended that was aired as part of the full episode on Twitch, you can go to youtube.com/NewGamePlusTV. The Twitch channel is, of course, twitch.tv/NewGamePlusTV. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram /NewGamePlusTV. The website is newgameplus.tv. We're working on getting the podcast up and running again because the way that SoundCloud publishes stuff, it's a little bit all over. So I'm working with Dermot to get that sorted. But you can also find.
I was wondering why you hadn't pushed me to re-record a new one. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a bit cooked because I'm trying to get WordPress working, and that's always a nightmare. So that will happen shortly.
2020 is a bit cooked anyway.
That's correct. A bit. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, Adrian, Millie, and Jason.
No worries.
And thank you for hanging out with us at home, and we'll catch you next time.